Napoleon Bonaparte, the most painted man in history. Over 2,000 official portraits, paintings, sculptures, engravings. His face was everywhere, and yet nobody actually knew what he looked like. Because every single image was controlled, approved, adjusted, weaponized. By his government, by his enemies, by politics. Today, using AI, historical records, and the one source that could never lie, his death mask, we show you Napoleon as you have never seen him. The real one. This is Napoleon as he actually looked. Napoleon understood something that modern politicians still use today. The image is the message. He built an entire apparatus around his image, a personal art director, a censorship ministry, state-controlled exhibitions. Every official image had to pass through his system before the public ever saw it. Every official portrait had to be approved, every unflattering detail removed, every weakness erased. In early portraits, painted when he needed the army's loyalty, he is shown as lean, intense, almost ascetic, a man of the people, a soldier. In later portraits, suddenly he is broader, more imposing, more Roman emperor than battlefield commander, same man, different political need, different face. Meanwhile, his enemies in Britain were doing the opposite. The caricaturist James Gillray became Britain's most powerful weapon. Gillray's Napoleon, known in his prints as Little Boney, was a tiny, tantrum-throwing child in an oversized hat. Petulant, ridiculous, barely human. These images weren't just cartoons, they were psychological warfare, distributed deliberately, and it worked. The myth that Napoleon was extremely short traces almost entirely to these prints. British propaganda created a dwarf. French propaganda created a god. Both were fiction. In reality, he was 168 centimeters, perfectly average for a Frenchman of his era. His own generals were simply unusually tall, which made him appear small by comparison. Two sides, two completely different Napoleons, both invented, both political. In all of this, only two images escaped the propaganda machine. The first, by accident. In 1797, France's greatest painter, Jacques-Louis David, was commissioned to paint Napoleon. He sat him down, began sketching. 3 hours later, Napoleon stood up and left. "I don't have time," he said. The painting was never finished, just a raw sketch of a real face, before the politics could touch it. The second, by death. On May 5, 1821, Napoleon died on the island of St. Helena. And before the burial, his physician pressed plaster against his face. No politics, no approval, no agenda, just physics. These two images, an unfinished sketch and a dead man's face, are the only honest records we have. Everything else was a performance. Before we show you the reconstruction, we want to show you something else. Not paintings, not propaganda, written accounts from people who stood next to him. Miot de Melito, French special minister, met Napoleon during the Italian campaign. He wrote, "A man of extraordinary leanness, not handsome at first sight, but with strongly pronounced features and ardent, scrutinizing eyes, a broad forehead that declared the deep thinker." Alexander von Humboldt, one of the greatest scientists of the era, saw him at the Institut National in Paris. He noted, "A small head, an oval face, very spare, brown, thin hair, eyebrows strong and well curved. His forehead protruded above the nose." Chateaubriand described a smile that was friendly and winning, eyes that sat deep under his forehead. Joseph Farrington observed blue-gray eyes, lighter than expected, unstudied, natural, calm. A British witness, an enemy nation, the same gray-blue eyes. Denis Davidoff wrote, "The portraits he had seen all showed Napoleon with dark eyes and black hair. The reality surprised him completely. Napoleon's hair was not black, but dark reddish blonde, and his eyes were blue. A Russian general, an enemy. The paintings had been lying about something as basic as hair color. Dr. Corvisart described chestnut hair, gray, penetrating eyes, a nose straight and well-shaped, a forehead high and broad, 6 witnesses, 3 countries, 2 of them enemies, all describing the same face. None of this is in the official portraits." So we took these two sources, the unfinished sketch from 1797, the death mask from 1821. We cross-referenced them with every written eyewitness description we could find, from generals, from diplomats, from servants, from enemies. And we used AI to reconstruct what they all agreed on. Blue-gray eyes, heavily hooded upper eyelids, giving that permanent look of calm intensity that every witness described. Dark, reddish-brown hair, not black as most paintings show. Davidov's account alone was enough to establish this. Mediterranean olive complexion. A straight aquiline nose, thin lips, a smooth rounded chin, a face that is, surprisingly, neither the heroic emperor of French paintings nor the ridiculous cartoon of British propaganda. Just a man, an unusually intense, unusually focused man. Compare for yourself. The death mask on the left, our reconstruction on the right. You decide how close we got. The unfinished portrait, the one that escaped, no propaganda, no approval, just David's sketch before Napoleon walked out. A woman who knew Napoleon that same year told the writer Stendhal, had he not been so thin as to have a sickly air, one would have realized he had unusually delicate features. The lines of his mouth, she said, were full of charm. Of all 12 portraits, this one and the death mask are the only two we fully trust. "20 years old, before the propaganda machine existed, before anyone cared how he looked. This portrait was painted for no political purpose. He was nobody yet. His school report from Brienne, written when he was 15, described him simply, good physique, excellent health, distinguished himself in mathematics, should make an excellent naval officer. No one was watching yet. No one had reason to lie." The Battle of Arcole, and with it, the propaganda machine switches on. This painting was specifically commissioned to create a myth. The lone hero on the bridge, the flag, the battlefield drama. In reality, Napoleon was on that bridge for approximately 30 seconds before being pushed into a ditch by his own retreating soldiers. The painting shows none of that, but that same year, Miot de Melito met him in Italy and wrote, "Extraordinary leanness, scrutinizing eyes, broad forehead, a determined character. The real man was there. The painting just chose a different version of him." First consul, ruler of France. The face in portraits begins to change. Painters are now instructed, less lean, more authoritative, less soldier, more statesman. His personal secretary, Madame de Rémusat, described him at this time. He dictated while walking, never wrote anything in his own hand. His mind moved so fast his secretaries had to develop their own shorthand just to keep up. The real face, broader, fuller, actually fits this period better than earlier portraits admitted. (1800). He crossed the Alps in winter. Everyone said it was impossible. He did it. David painted him for this moment, on a rearing white horse, dramatic, godlike. Napoleon's actual instruction to David, "Paint me calm, on a fiery horse." When told the portrait wasn't realistic, Napoleon replied, "It is not necessary that the portrait be a likeness. It is enough that it be striking." He understood the image better than anyone. The coronation portrait, the ultimate propaganda image, laurel wreath like Caesar, ermine fur like medieval kings, designed to place him in a lineage of the greatest rulers in history. The painter spent 2 years on this image, every detail approved, every symbol deliberate. 2 years earlier, Fanny Burney had written of his actual face, deeply impressive, pale, care, thought, melancholy and meditation strongly marked in every feature, more the air of a student than a warrior. And yet, look at the reconstruction beside it. The real face is somehow more powerful than the invented one. The empire at its peak. 70 million people under his direct control. It was this year that Denis Davidov, the Russian general, saw him at Tilsit. He described his surprise at finding a man heavier than expected, with reddish blonde hair and blue eyes that no portrait had shown him. The portraits from this period show a man of absolute certainty, calm, immovable. What they don't show, he was already making the decisions that would destroy everything. The iconic bicorn hat, always sideways, his personal signature. He owned approximately 100 of them. This year he divorced Josephine. 13 years, hundreds of battlefield letters. All the betrayals, all the forgiveness. He said it was politics. Witnesses said he wept. The face is fuller now, the body heavier. The portraits begin to show it. Carefully, diplomatically, but they show it. A German teacher who saw him in 1811 wrote, "His profile reminded one of the busts of Augustus, imposing, classical, but also something friendly about it." Even propaganda had to acknowledge time. Russia is next, and everyone in his court knows it, and nobody says anything. "600,000 soldiers cross into Russia. The Russian generals burn everything behind them as they retreat. Every village, every field. Moscow is already burning when Napoleon arrives. The Russians set it on fire themselves. Of 600,000, 60,000 return home. No portrait was painted of him during that winter. Look at this face. Compare it to the first portrait. By 1811, a French novelist had already written, yellow, obese, bloated, his head too far forward on his shoulders. The propaganda machine was still running. The portrait still showed authority, control, power. But look at the real face beside it. That is what the portraits were hiding. Fontainebleau Palace, April 6, 1814. He sits alone, hat on the floor. His marshals have left. His empire is gone. This painting, unlike most, was made without his approval. The painter Delaroche made it years later, reconstructing the moment from witness accounts. It is one of the most honest official paintings of Napoleon that exists, because by then, there was no longer any propaganda left to protect. And then, after everything, there is this. No painter, no approval, no politics, just plaster pressed against a dead man's face on a remote island in the middle of the Atlantic. This is the only image of Napoleon Bonaparte that no one controlled. Look at it carefully. This is not the towering emperor of French paintings. This is not the ridiculous cartoon of British propaganda. This is a man, with a rounded face, a sharp nose, thin lips, and closed eyes. Peaceful, ordinary, real. 200 years of paintings, 2,000 official portraits, an entire government apparatus dedicated to his image. And in the end, this was what was underneath all of it. Every portrait you saw today was a negotiation between the real man and the image someone needed him to be. His own government needed a god emperor. His enemies needed a joke. His painters needed to survive. And somewhere in between all of that, there was an actual human being. This is him, as you have never seen him.
I am Napoleon. I am emperor.